select the language channel that's right for you. All right, tonight's agenda, and I should note, actually, I'll back to this. I will remind myself and remind all our speakers for this evening to speak a little bit more slowly, try and pace your speaking, and hopefully that will be helpful for everyone, but it'll certainly be helpful for the interpreters. Tonight's agenda, I'm going to go over some project background, selection of priority projects, and then we're here to talk about 2 priority projects this evening, the Natick High School and the Longfellow Pond Rosemary Brook area. We do know that we double booked. Again, such a busy time of year. We tried to find the perfect night, but it doesn't exist. We are double booked with Wellesley's town meeting. So we're going to offer an earlier optional Wellesley session as well in a breakout room. So there will be 2 options if folks are coming late or leaving early and are interested in the Wellesley project. Charles River Watershed Association is one of the oldest watershed associations in the country. Our mission is to protect, restore, and enhance the Charles River and its watershed through science, advocacy, and the law. At Charles River Watershed Association, we take a watershed view. The Charles River is 80 miles long, but the drainage area around the river is 308 square miles. That's our watershed. And almost everything that goes on in that 308 square mile watershed affects the river. So we need to take a watershed view when you're talking about cleaning, protecting, and restoring the river. There's 35 cities and towns, either fully or partially in the watershed, approximately 1 million residents. The majority of them, background noise on my end, the majority of them living in environmental justice neighborhoods. We acknowledge that the Charles River watershed resides on the occupied territory of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, and Wampanoag tribes. As we become modern stewards of the land, we feel it's very important to acknowledge this, recognize this, and engage with Native partners and traditional knowledge and understand that as we do our work today. All right, so the project we're here to talk about today is focused on flooding as a result of climate change all across our watershed. Rainstorms are getting more intense and more severe as a result of our changing climate. We're making decisions today that will last into the future, but there's a lot we don't understand about what's coming. So we developed the Charles River flood model to try to give ourselves, our local decision makers, and our residents a better picture of what to expect for flooding in the future. We're making development decisions today, such as where to build, where to add housing, which we desperately need. We don't want to build things where it's going to be flooded out. We don't want to build things that are going to make flooding downstream worse for our neighbors. So to the most extent possible, we don't have a crystal ball to see into the future, but to the extent possible that we can use technology and understand what might be coming, this allows us to have better data to make better decisions. Our project team, all folks who are joining us on the meeting today, is the Charles River Climate Compact, a voluntary partnership of cities and towns in the watershed working together on climate adaptation, communities responding to extreme weather, Weston and Sampson, who you'll be hearing from, and us, Charles River Watershed Association. I also listed out the full list of towns that are involved in the project. Oops, okay. So as I already mentioned, we're talking about 2 projects tonight. We're going to run some design ideas by folks, get some input from you all. You guys are the local experts, so we really want to hear from you. The 2 projects, as you probably know, are the Natick High School and Longfellow Pond area. But how did we get here? Why are we even talking about these? So some very quick background. This is our 2nd year of identifying priority projects. These are sites where we're looking for opportunities to make some changes to the landscape that will help reduce flooding. So the first thing we did was develop a prioritization method. How are we going to find good sites? And how are we going to rank these? What are we looking for in sites? Step 2 was to collect project ideas. And most of those came from our city and town partners. They suggested sites that may make good flood control opportunities in their communities. A few of them came from residents, neither of these, but in past rounds. And then we used that methodology we developed to come up with our priorities. So what were we looking for? Well, one thing is we're generally always focused on nature-based solutions. These are technologies that use natural systems to help reduce flooding. So things like wetlands, things like large rain gardens, even things potentially as small as trees can help reduce flooding. And then this water symbol, it may be obvious, but we are looking for things that will help reduce flooding. So generally for that, you need 2 things. You need to be close to water, usually. And you also tend to need a lot of space. To really reduce flooding, you have to hold a large amount of water, and water takes up a fair amount of space. So we were looking for large sites. The shovel here is to symbolize that in this project, we are looking for projects that are fairly ready to implement. So things that we think could get permitted under current regulations, things that we think might be readily lined up for funding, things that the community is supportive of already. Because our goal is to start taking action now so that by the time 2070, 2100 comes and we're seeing these really severe rainstorms on the regular, we're ready. And then the heart is to symbolize, again, community support. So we're looking for things that add to the community, you know, not just flood control. What other benefits can these bring to the community? Are they bringing more green space? Are they bringing an educational opportunity, a recreational opportunity? Is it something that communities already identified as a priority? So that's really what we were looking for. Here are our results. Longfellow Pond, Natick High School that we're talking about tonight. And then we have a meeting at the end of the month, which will focus on the area around the Brothers Market in Weston Town Center. All right, so what is our process? So tonight we're gonna present, as I said, some concept designs. If that term is unfamiliar to you, I'll define it on the next slide. We're going to look for your input on them so that together with our flooding experts and you, our community experts, we come up with the best design possible. In addition to providing input tonight, we have an online questionnaire that'll be open for a while. And then we're also doing in-person events in both communities. Already had one in Natick, and we'll be at the Earth Day cleanup in Wellesley. And then once we have our design, we can use our flood model to actually see what the impacts are. So that's a great feature of the Charles River Flood Model. Not only does it tell us where is it going to flood and how is flooding going to get worse, it lets us test out these things that might make it better. Then what happens? Then we try to look for more funding. Ultimately, you have to do additional design, additional community engagement, and then of course the end goal is implementation. All right, I said I would define concept design. Very high level definition, but this is a design that gives you a general idea of what could happen on the site. So it will consider our project goals, flood control, community benefit, as I already mentioned, basic site information. These are things you guys tonight can definitely help us with, and community needs and desires. Again, you guys are the experts in that. There's a bunch of things we don't get into on this level, very precise elevations, exact soil conditions, all potential ADA requirements, you know, interfacing with every community department. Those are things that would come down the line. So the concept design, like it sounds, is a concept. And so just to reiterate, what are we looking to you for and how will the feedback be incorporated? We definitely want to hear things you like and you don't like for what the ideas we're going to present tonight. We would like to hear input on the site that we may not be aware of, we may not know about, we may not have thought about. So, you know, maybe we're moving some parking and you let us know, oh, that, you know, that parking is always full during A, B, and C. And then love to have you help us also share out our questionnaire as well if you have friends, neighbors, or others that you think might be interested. So there is the online feedback questionnaire that I mentioned is on our website. I'm going to show this slides at the end as well, but if folks want to get it up already, you can just go to our website under our work, find climate resilience. If you're in the interpretation channels, note you can also view the website in multiple languages. And click on the Charles River Flood Model, and you will see this online form to provide input. And my colleague Julia also made this great shortcut link that is available as well. If you want to type that in, it will take you directly to the survey. All right. So with that, I am going to stop my screen share. Okay, we are going to, as I said, we're going to have the optional Wellesley breakout room, which we will open up now. Julia, since I made you host, it looks like you will have to do that. So folks who may have timing constraints, if you are interested in going to the optional Wellesley breakout room, you can join that now. If it didn't pop up under more, just click those 3 buttons and hit join breakout room. If you want to hear about both projects, you can just stay here because we will cover both projects. All right, so we'll give folks a minute to choose that if they want. Folks on the interpretation channels, please continue to join us here in the main room. Okay, all right. I see our movement has paused a bit. So with that, I will introduce John Frey from Weston and Sampson, who is going to walk us through some of the exciting design ideas for Natick High School.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Julie, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for taking out time from this beautiful evening to join us on the call today. I'll just share my screen, and please let me know if you can see. I can't see anybody, so.
We're not seeing it yet, John.
Okay. Oh, yep, there, that's why. I always forget. For Zoom, you have to confirm. There we go.
Also,
So
is there a way that you could, from a phone, to get to the Wellesley meeting versus the Natick meeting? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing all the buttons you talked about on my iPhone.
Yes. Yes, I can move you. Is this Peter speaking?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Sorry to slow the meeting down for others.
Nope, that's fine. Does anyone else want to be moved into the breakout room that's having any trouble with it? All right. Yeah. No problem. It's meant to be a two-way communication meeting. So happy to, yeah. Okay.
All right. So great. We are here in this group to talk first about Natick High School. And if you are, just to situate everybody, if you aren't familiar with the site, the high school is located off of Route 27 or Main Street and Pond Street, located, if you're able to see my cursor, the site is pointing with the orange arrow towards the high school, and the high school is located right at the edge along Doug Pond, and is essentially the high school is a campus that includes its renovated building that was completed circa 2015. On the next few slides, we'll show generally kind of the site overview, kind of what's existing and what was built with that high school renovation. So as part of the new high school development, there's several different low impact development or existing green infrastructure that was implemented to deal with stormwater on the site. That's highlighted with these green areas, which represent some of the existing stormwater or bioretention areas. There's also rain harvesting that happens with collection from the building, from the roof print, and collecting it for reuse. There's existing sports fields located towards the north of the site. So this is a site plan, and this is just showing in the same site plan, but with an ortho image, so you can kind of see the context of the neighborhood surrounding. We have the existing sports fields, the tennis courts. This is West Road running along the border, just to help you situate where we are. And then this is the large existing parking lot, which now has solar panels covering most of the lot. And so this is showing, as part of the development of the high school, there already are considerations for stormwater that are designed to accommodate the existing storm or first flush of rain or stormwater runoff. And then we also see in this map that the green boundary that's kind of moving along the edge of the high school and extending beyond the existing pond boundary is the FEMA flood layer. This is representing the 1% annual chance of flooding, or also known as the 100-year storm event flood boundaries. And what is also interesting is there's a separation here. So this represents a small pond that's being split by West Road as it kind of moves north towards Pond Street. These are hydrologically connected, as well as wetlands and a drainage area that moves farther east that flows through the neighborhood through a series of pipes and outlets into this pond. And so all of that's interesting when we consider the existing, the context of the subwatersheds and the localized flooding that actually happens at this site. So this is actually looking at the Charles River Watershed flood mapper or viewer. And the site, as we pointed out, is located right along Doug Pond, which is right here. And from this extracted map view, we can see that the flooding that we're showing in terms of depth, so these cells located here represent depth of flooding additional to existing water. We can see that this is actually kind of a localized flooding issue or a site-specific flooding issue that's not caused from flooding, back watering from a brook or from a pond that's causing this area to flood. It's just that there's lots of water coming in directly into the pond, and it doesn't have as fast of a way to leave this area. And so all of that to say that the solutions that we're going to look at for Natick High School are really going to help address the flooding volume and water quality of this area. They won't necessarily have major impacts to flooding downstream per se, but they will help address the issues directly adjacent to the high school. When we zoom in a little bit more, you can start to see the shape of these hexagons or colors represent the mesh that's developed as part of the flooding exercise and modeling. But each color represents a specific depth of flooding. So we have that ranging from less than a half a foot or 6 inches of flooding, all the way up to more than 3 feet of flooding. And so what you can start to see is that there are areas such as the smaller pond that's been separated by West Road is experiencing something of 6 inches of additional flooding to its current surface. And then when we start to move into Doug Pond and along the edge of the high school, that becomes more significant in terms of its depth. And if you have any questions, please, you can raise your hand or ask me to slow down if there's issues with translation. And so what we started to look at are the opportunities for Natick High School to start carving out spaces or rethinking existing programmed spaces to accommodate stormwater volume as well as water quality. And so the map here shows 2 major projects, one being the potential to retrofit the existing playing fields as a floodable field that represents over 23,000 square feet. The relevance of this site is its proximity to Doug Pond and the fact that we could intercept or collect stormwater from all of the other LID projects or the roadways and actually collect it before it would typically outfall into the pond, storing it and then being able to release it later once the storm has subsided or flood levels have subsided. And the second project that we'll jump into is a treatment wetland, which utilizes an auxiliary parking space that's just adjacent to that smaller pond that I've been pointing out. That would allow for that space to be flooded potentially. So it would be rethinking the design of that area, if it needs to be parking, or if it could be actually renaturalized to function as a wetland and therefore help water quality improvements that capturing and treating water before it flows into the open water body. And so what we're showing here is the potential of that subsurface storage underneath the playing fields. And right now it has two baseball or softball fields at each corner, as well as a soccer or football field length or proper dimensions that fit between the infields of both of those surfaces. And when we're talking about the potential of this to be a floodable solution, that can come in different types of forms or designs. So again, thinking about this as a concept, this is an ideal area. The dimensions could vary if we were to get into more design development. But ultimately, the way that this could function in terms of stormwater is that it could, one, be lowered in terms of its surface elevation, and water could be collected during a major storm event and be able to be stored temporarily on the surface. Another option is for the field surface to be redesigned to allow high percolation or infiltration through the ground and have subsurface storage types like the ones on the right side of the page that store the water underground and then either infiltrate that water or have an outlet that drains back into duck pond. And so those types of systems, like the ones on the right on the top, can be modular, which imagine a milk crate that is stackable and is high void in terms of the space that it can capture water. So we're talking about, something that could be designed kind of like a Lego brick approach that could be stacked to as deep of a depth as we'd be able to achieve, considering future like groundwater conditions or soil conditions. And then the other option would be something like the underwater or underground tank that holds water. That could be connected back to the drainage system. That could be connected to pumps for reuse, for rewatering the field surface, the grass field surface, or the landscape around the high school. So there's benefits to both approaches. One could take up more space, like the tanks have a definite dimension, whereas the modular system could be laid out and curve around the outfields, the infields, or span various depth or width. So there's flexibility in how both of those systems are deployed. And then the auxiliary parking lot in green here, which is roughly about 7,000 square feet. It already frequently floods from that small pond. And its current condition, it is kind of a gravel, loose aggregate or loose kind of gravel lot that's used for parking for guests or visitors of the high school, as well as kind of some temporary storage for different kind of maintenance practices from the high school. But this area already is flooding. It's lower in elevation than the current roadway of West Road. And again, it's already flooding from when this pond starts to fill up, water jumps its bank and starts to flood the lower area, which is the parking area. And so the concept there is if the parking area doesn't need to host the current programming of auxiliary parking space that can be accommodated elsewhere in the high school, then this site could actually be returned or renaturalized to function as a wetland, or even just be an open green space that hosts various vegetation that might be dry, but during those big storm events collects rainwater, temporarily stores it, and then allows water to slowly percolate and move back into the open water system. And so the benefits of this type of project are the improvements to water quality, as well as extending the potential floodplain. So this smaller pond could actually overflood its bank, but in a controlled way that keeps flooding just the extent of where we're designing the parking lot edge. In addition to those two major projects, as I noted before, with the high school, the development of the high school, they had already considered stormwater runoff as part of the as part of their plan. So all of these green areas represent bioretention swales or vegetated depressed areas that can hold stormwater during storm events. The idea here is that we wouldn't want to just have these acting independently of the systems that we're proposing. And we could actually propose to enhance their functionality. So instead of maybe expanding them, because you can see from the photo that they're already quite large, the design of them accommodates open space and dry areas for students to congregate outdoor when the weather's nice. So we wouldn't want to be expanding the footprint, but we could actually connect them in terms of under drain systems to the storage in the fields that are just to the north. So this image over here is kind of representing the flow of collecting that stormwater runoff that's already in that system and being able to direct the overflow of that towards the underground storage. That way we can utilize the current system or the existing drainage system and maximize its ability to continue to collect and convey stormwater, while also being able to maximize the storage that's being proposed for the sports field areas. And so the overall benefits and co-benefits of these types of projects is that we can be able to quantify water quality improvements as well as the increased storage capacity. We're also able to increase the amount of rainwater harvesting and reuse. So the ability to tap into the underground storage and be able to reuse it for the sports fields, for the high schools, kind of typical landscaping and maintenance regimes, make it really appealing in terms of its kind of reuse, recycling, and thinking about the water cycle and reactivating the water that we're collecting, especially as we move into the future with the uncertainty and unpredictabilities of rainfall and drought cycles. So our ability to collect rainwater when we can and reuse it is bolstered by future climate conditions. There's also the opportunity that these systems, the open revegetation, renaturalization, as well as the stormwater systems, could be an important element of the education or STEM resources for the high school, and as well as other levels, middle school, elementary schools, as a way that students could use the sites, monitor the sites for classes to understand about water flow, or also species, identify and collect species of plants and animals associated with water ecosystems and freshwater ecosystems. And then lastly, there's the ability of these systems to lower the intensity or to be able to accommodate less intense and more frequent storms. And so some of the potential challenges and concerns is one, like I've been noting, there's already significant stormwater management upgrades across the site. But again, those are something that we should be able that we would want to tap into and to enhance rather than let them just do what they've been doing. And again, they're designed to work with current standards in terms of projected storm or current storm events. So the first inch or the first inch and a half of stormwater runoff. But what we're really looking into as part of this project is future rainfall events. So 2030, 2050, 2070. And as we see with modeling, the stormwater volumes are projected to increase and become more frequently intense. And so finding more opportunities, increasing the capacity of the current systems, current drainage systems and current green infrastructure is really important. Another of the potential challenges and concerns is the large-scale flood benefits. Is that large-scale flood benefits require a big footprint, and that's something that isn't unique to this watershed. It's something that we have to deal with, across the Charles River, throughout the Charles River. But these sites represent significant areas in terms of their space and proximity to existing water bodies. The playing field improvements, there would be a need to maintain a function for students. And so making sure that there's dry surfaces for students to play on that are safe. When we're talking about using it as a floodable field, we really have to consider that that's only a condition in which it would be flooded for extreme storm events, not day to day, not monthly, but really in those exceptional storms. And that for the majority of the year, that it will be dry and a safe surface to play, to run on, for students to use. And that the last is that the auxiliary parking lot, the field house that's present there needs some maintained access. So at the end, or just across from that parking lot area, there's the maintenance facility. So those are all generally the potential challenges and concerns. So I know we kind of threw a bunch of information and high-level concepts at you right now, but if there are questions or clarifications, now is the time to jump in. I think we already have a hand raised.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks, John, for the presentation. That was great. Yeah, why don't we get right into it, Tom?
Thank you. Thanks a lot, John. I'm very familiar with the site because I live just south of there in Sherborne. But if you would, I got two quick questions. And if I could impose on you, could you go back to the flood modeling slide?
Yes.
I can ask them from there. The other one of the pond itself.
The zoomed in. Okay.
Perfect. The first question, why doesn't the model show equivalent depths across the pond? And why doesn't it cover it, the whole pond? Yeah,
the extent of the flooding, or I'll first address the way that the model is built. Essentially this is a triangulated mesh surface that's built from all of the different kind of LiDAR points that's grabbing using the digital elevation model that's available from the state. Essentially, what that is showing is kind of a surface elevation model, so, showing what all of these elevations are. Typically, the open water surface is kind of follows the typical open land, and as you noted, there are some missing points here. The depth of flooding, it's really clear when we're kind of in the enclosed areas, those kind of necks or bottlenecks, right, where it's kind of narrower. The part of that is kind of the introduction of water flow as it's coming into the system, where we're showing kind of the movement of water from the higher watershed as it's kind of moving down and collecting into the more open areas. And I think the island that's registered here kind of in the middle of Doug Pond is influencing the cells as the water movement. So, I mean, these are, when we zoom out and you see the model, which is developed at this large regional scale, the ability to really get fine-tuned in terms of like a meter, 3 feet by 3 feet cells, which is what the elevation model is. We're not able to reach that kind of resolution but the resolution that I'm showing right now, which is still, these are typically, I think, about 50 feet in terms of length, or 100, 300 feet, sorry. That type of resolution, given that this is a regional scale model, is actually pretty amazing that we're able to capture that. But yeah, the way that the landform is converging in certain areas, as well as kind of indicating water flow into the open water body, that's where we see like the influence of depth. And this is all to say, all of this open water body, you wouldn't, if you were out there real time, you wouldn't register 1 to 2 feet here and only 6 inches to a foot here. It would probably be pretty level in terms of its event, although it would be a storm, so it would be windy and wavy. But that's, when we start to zoom out, you see that resolution. So it's still something we can, still something that we're able to work with. And
very, very good. The other question, and certainly from the model, it looks like you're not worried about the infrastructure building damage. So certainly water quality, I understand you've got a bathing beach there. You already have nutrients and issues in that pond, but all of those structural choices, the treated wetlands and things, what kind of water quality efficiencies or trapping of nutrients or pollutants, what are they capable of achieving?
Yeah, so again, I'll preface this by saying these are like high level concepts, but typically when we start to go into design development, we'd be following the Mass Stormwater Handbook guidelines in terms of the designs. And something like a treatment wetland could be able to, depending on the size and how we're actually getting water there, can be designed to treat up to 90% of TSS, or the total sediments and solids. So
how about phosphorus?
Yeah. More so for the treatment wetland. That's dealing more at a biology and biochemical level. Something like the floodable field, if we're just talking about storage, isn't necessarily going to treat. You'd have to add in either a treatment type of system, or if you're allowing water to infiltrate through soil, that could be treatment. But the treatment wetland, in terms of its actual ability to remove phosphorus, remove excess nitrogen, is definitely more of a water quality improvement versus the floodable field, which is looking really at storage.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other questions, or if folks want to share some of their feedback now, happy to have that too. Oh, great, Andrew.
Hi. I actually went to Natick High School when it was being renovated back in 2014, 2015, like after it was renovated in 2012. And I guess my question is relating to what Thomas was saying about nitrogen and phosphorus issues. Like, would you expect like a surge in those issues as water levels rise from flooding? And do you think that even with, say, an extreme event, that the potential surge of those issues could be handled by the treatment wetland?
So that's a great question. I think when we start to see excess or exceptional storm events, excess stormwater runoff, you do see chemicals flowing off of nitrogen and phosphorus entering into the water system, just because it's being carried with that excess flow of water, whether it's from the street, whether it's from yards, And what we aren't showing in the map, and maybe we can zoom out a little bit further, but the watershed that's feeding into that pond extends all the way to South Main Street. And it's rainwater that's collected from the road to moving through all these yards. There's pipes and conduits that connect them right. You can start to see the edge of that coming right through here. So, you know, a lot of chemicals that we'd associate with lawn care, you know, or fresh grass yards and stuff, that starts entering the system. What we're able to capture and treat as part of the projects that presented today, really the zoom to this page, the floodable field is really going to be dealing with the excess volume, as well as whatever rain falls on that site. The treatment wetland, however, once water starts overflowing from that wetland area and it enters into the pond area and enters into the wetland area, could be captured and treated. The best way for that to actually be able to treat and remove chemicals is if we're being able to convey stormwater directly from the roads first through that treatment area, and then it overflows into Duck Pond. And so we would design the idea moving forward, you know, with the design development of these projects, you would design them to a specific storm event. So ideally, we'd be looking at like the 10-year type of storm event for the year of 2070, which represents kind of a magnified typical or big storm that we'd have today. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And there was a question in the chat sort of building off what you just said, actually, John. Do these proposed solutions adequately handle future levels of storms? So I can quickly jump in, and then John, you can add. Once we have finalized these design ideas based on the community input, then we will run them through the model. And back to Tom's question, when we do that, we will use a finer level of detail than what John showed on the prior side, which is a model run for the entire watershed. Almost, I think the study area for the project is something like 270 square miles, very large. But when we do these priority projects, we zoom in and we run the model at finer resolution. And so then at that time, we'll really be able to answer your question. Based on past experience, I'll just reiterate a few things John already said. The goal here primarily would be to improve water quality on, you know, a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and then protect the immediate site during extreme events. So as John mentioned, we'll look at like a 2070 10-year storm, which is a pretty significant event. So that would be the goal for this site, is really, you know, protect the infrastructure. Obviously, it's a major community investment, the high school. So protect the infrastructure from damage during an extreme event. So we'll have a solid answer as to what will the benefit of the proposed designs be at the end of the project. And we will present those in June. Again, based on past experience, it is sometimes iterative. Sometimes what we come up with isn't ambitious enough on the first go round. So if anybody has really exciting out of the box, big picture ideas, we're also open to those. So feel free to chime in with those or put them in through the survey. I have time maybe for One more question, comments, thoughts?
Can I ask a quick one again? Would it be practical to look at that contributing watershed and the amount of impervious surface and just try to reduce impervious surfaces to pick up more infiltration?
Julie, I'm happy to jump in on that one if you want. So Tom, this is Rundelli, conservation agent for the town of Natick. So you are quite right that that is definitely an area where we can be looking. This small sort of auxiliary pond before going into Dug Pond actually takes quite a bit of the runoff from Natick Town Center, which is definitely an area with high levels of impervious surface. And that is definitely an area that the town is considering as potential solutions. Obviously, there's not many opportunities for roadway diets in the middle of town, but as buildings in town center are redeveloped, opportunities for improved stormwater management and improvements to the existing stormwater drainage infrastructure in the roadways are definitely things that the town is considering.
Great.
And Tom is being modest, but he's an important part of this project. For those that aren't as involved, I will just mention, we have also looked at those types of approaches on the watershed scale. So something we looked at last year at this point was, what if we reduced impervious cover everywhere by 25%? And it has an impact, but it's a small impact. So again, I'll just reiterate that when we're talking about mitigating flooding from future large-scale storm events, the actions do need to be pretty ambitious and aggressive. But again, that's why we're looking for these investments to really also provide a lot of additional community benefits. All the things we've been talking about: water quality, green space, habitat. So that's why we're starting to talk about it now. Start getting some things on the ground. Getting some things on the ground so we're ready. Oh. About that, something, of course, it's the first day I have windows open and there's all sorts of sirens. Something must be going on in my neighborhood. John, do you want to maybe stop the screen share and just give folks one more minute? We're gonna close out the breakout room and transition to the Wellesley project in a moment. But any last comments or questions? Thank you again, Julia, for reminding us where to find the survey. She just put the bit.ly link into the chat. Okay, great. Well, we will be transitioning now to our second priority project. Actually, I will quickly, as we let folks filter back in, I am going to, quickly share my screen again. All right. Okay, great. So we're all together again. Just a quick reminder, old-fashioned way, crwa.org, click on climate resilience, select the language for the website, and then click on flood model. This is what that survey will look like. So just select the project you're providing input for. Obviously, we have multiple projects. And then tell us what you think. What do you like? What don't you like? We have also looking at prior sites, we got a lot of information from the community on past studies that had been done that we were not aware of. So if you know of any past studies, investigations, please let us know. And if you have the links, please share it.
Hey, Julie, it's Jenny from Weston and Sampson. I am apologizing. I may have messed up the recording and hit unrecord when we joined the main room.
No, we're still recording.
Okay, good. That was just my end. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. No problem. No problem. All right. Well, welcome back, folks from the breakout room. We're gonna transition into our Wellesley project presentation. Take 2 for Jenny, take 1 for the rest of us.
Great, thanks everyone. So I'm gonna share my screen so folks can see this. So the town of Wellesley is considering some options to reduce flooding long-term in the Longfellow Pond area. And as you will see on the next slide, so we are looking at an area of Wellesley that is in eastern Wellesley, and excuse me, it's not advancing. Okay, so we are looking at a segment of Wellesley that has a stream system that, if I start with the most downstream point, it hits the confluence with the Charles River just past Interstate I-95, or Route 128, as many people call it. And there's sort of a wetland stream system that works upstream. It passes under Route 9 in a culvert. It then there's a dam, which is the Longfellow Pond Dam, that creates the impoundment for Longfellow Pond. And that's how this pond exists. There's also the town of Wellesley Town Forest, which is the outline in sort of green, white area. And moving upstream, there is a culvert under Oakland Road and a wetland system upstream of that. And then the Wellesley Avenue Dam that creates this impoundment.
So what you are looking at here is the output of the Charles River flood model, as Julie mentioned in the opening session. And what we are seeing here is the Rosemary Brook watershed, which is one of the sub-watershed of the upper and the middle Charles River watershed that we're focusing on for this project. The Rosemary Brook watershed is approximately 3.9 square miles, and it includes the towns of Wellesley and Needham. What you are seeing here are the flood depths and flood extents from the 10-year storm that is likely to occur by 2070. And this is approximately 7.1 inches of rain in 24 hours, based on the latest and the greatest available science and climate change projections that have been adopted by the state of Massachusetts. For context, the 10-year storm of today, as we know it, is approximately 5 inches. So the flood extents and depths that we are showing here in these different shades of blue correspond to about more than 2 inches of rain from a 10-year storm as we know it today. And what we are seeing here is our flooding impacts along Oakland Street as well as Route 9, coupled with some impacts of backyard flooding on residential properties. But would also like to mention that there is some existing natural floodplain available, which can serve as storage within this Rosemary Brook watershed area.
Indrani and Jenny, I'm sorry, I should have reminded you guys. Would you guys just introduce yourselves before, like, when you start the presentation, since the folks in the main room and on the interpretation channels haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet?
Sure, no problem, Julian. Sorry about that. So hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Moonen. I'm a senior project engineer with Weston and Sampson, and I am, my background is in drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater work, and I am working with Indrani, who is our technical lead, and I'll let her go next.
Thank you, Jenny. I am Indrani Ghosh. I am a residency senior technical leader here at Weston and Sampson, and have been working as the project manager and the technical lead from the Weston and Sampson side, but backed up by a strong and robust team here, and very excited to be working with CRWA and crew on this important regional project.
So
and with
Indrani,
that, yeah, the next slide, please, Jenny.
Yep. Yeah. So just to zoom in on Longfellow Pond for a moment, it is about 7.5 acres of surface area, and it's a somewhat shallow pond with depths ranging from 2.5 to 5 feet. As many of you who are familiar with the pond know, it's nicely wooded shoreline. There's a lovely trail around the pond as well as a trail system in the town forest. There's a boat launch on Oakland Street. And this pond is created by a man-made dam that's earthen, technically, and it has an outlet control which is uses stop logs. And the photograph on the right is an image of the impoundment, the outlet control. If you were kayaking or canoeing in the pond, this is what you would see. And this pond has been inspected and has some, the dam has been inspected and has some deficiencies that do need to get corrected. So those are part of consideration for the project. What we are looking at beyond the pond itself and the dam that has sort of a need for correctional work is this entire stream system. So we're considering if there are opportunities for flood storage in the town forest, and that may be by creating space that currently exists by expanding it or making it deeper. We're considering what alterations might need to be made to the culvert under Oakland Street and creating stream continuity, connection, recreational potentially improvements. Thinking about stormwater improvements on Oakland Street and at the parking lot that is just at the south of the Longfellow Pond, and managing the dams, both Longfellow Pond and further upstream in conjunction. And all of these projects will have the potential for improving water quality. Some of the constraints that we have observed are, there are the town's drinking water wells. There are drinking water wells down by Longfellow Pond, and there are drinking water wells at the Rosemary Brook pond upstream. There is a high pressure 24-inch diameter gas line that follows along Longfellow Pond Dam and through the pond that needs to be considered with any proposed work. And we have to be very aware of wetlands and habitat impacts. Any changes to this natural system, even though it's been adjusted by man-made development over the many years we've been around, we do have to consider what is the current state of wetlands and habitat and protect those habitats and wetlands. Thinking about the dams themselves. So this is a picture on the right of Longfellow Pond Dam's outlet from downstream now. So this is not if you were in a kayak, but if you were walking upstream and saw this. But we are considering a number of options. You could repair or replace the existing dam and the outlet control. And this, and under this scenario, there would be no change to operations. This would be minor repairs and updates. There are opportunities to modify this outlet control and the operations of it. And that could be how it opens, how it closes. Do you create space for water when it rains to be in the pond, or do you let that water out? And when do you let that water out? You can also modify the dam structure itself to be more dynamically controllable. And think about, again, when do you hold back water and when do you let it flow downstream? And a last option is removing the dams, which is very challenging, as I have mentioned, from a permitting perspective, removing recreational access. So there are a lot of concerns around that option.
So what we are showing here on this slide is conceptually modeling the option of potentially removing the dam here as one of the options here among the options that Jenny mentioned in the previous slide. I would like to point out, though, that what we are showing here for before and after the project in terms of flooding does not necessarily factor the details of all the improvements and the suggested improvements in terms of green infrastructure, as well as the improvements to the culvert that Jenny mentioned, that are all possible considerations that we will be evaluating as we further this design based on the input that we are hearing from you all today, with the follow-on input, as Julie mentioned, from the survey, and those will be factored in advancing the design. However, we wanted to use the regional flood model that we have available as a great tool to evaluate the efficacy of this project in terms of flood reduction. And what you are seeing here on the left is, again, that same storm, the 2070 10-year storm. That is about 7 inches of rain in 24 hours, modeled through this removal of the dam. And what we are showing here is the removal of the dam. There is 4,000 cubic feet of storage in the Longfellow Pond area, which then that storage is lost at the peak of the storm. The decrease of flooding in and around the dam is negligible. The downstream reach between the pond and Route 9, which is the area that Jenny is pointing to, we're showing on the right here is the hydrograph of the before and after. So the existing conditions is in this yellow line here. And blue is post the dam removal. So there is a slight increase in peak flow, as you can see, with the dam obstruction sort of being removed. But what we are seeing is there is a reduced flooding downstream to the extent of about more than 30,000 cubic feet between Carver Road and Thackeray Road, which is, again, the area that Jenny is pointing on the screen, which corresponds to about a 5% reduction in flood volume. So that is a bit counterintuitive, that though you're seeing a slight increase in peak flow as a result of the dam removal and the peaks occurring slightly higher, however, it is the reduction in flood volume is a result of that peak occurring sooner, and hence the peak flood volume. There is an attenuation of about 5% in the peak flood volume, which that benefit is coming because of the peak occurring sooner than the rest of the system peaking. And so really that is because the stream flooding is caused by the stream flooding that is earlier than the mainstream of the Charles, and that which backwaters this area. So there is a reduction in flood volume. And also we have observed through these preliminary model results that we do not see any significant changes in peak flow, where at the confluence of Rosemary Brook and the Charles River, which is that red dot on the top there, and the hydrograph on the top shows the blue and the yellow line are very close to each other, indicating no significant increase in peak flow. And so what this really provides us is that the site provides an opportunity for us to look further as a potential option to consider for design, which may have which may have definitely some considerable benefits in flood reduction in terms of flood volume, if we consider this at a system scale.
So we are looking for folks tonight to provide some input and ask questions. Are there anyone who has questions or clarifications that you'd like some answers on that would help you provide feedback into the survey that Julie has mentioned a number of times? Or do you have any big picture concerns or issues you would like to raise verbally?
Jenny, do you mind going back to the slide that lists maybe the opportunities, just so folks can be reminded?
Oops, hold on. Yep.
Okay. And as folks are thinking of questions, I just wanted to make a clarification maybe with what you just were talking about, Indrani. And obviously, folks know CRWA is generally interested in dam management, dam removal. But so I just wanted to call out that we know that's not always an option. And so one of the things we've been looking at with this project, potentially here, we have another site in Waltham where we're looking at this, is this infrastructure that was built decades ago for some other purpose, but nevertheless exists. Can it actually be repurposed to provide us with some future benefits from flood control? So that's sort of an open question that we explore on a case-by-case basis. So yes, there are dams that CRWA is actively supporting removal of. But there are others that, for a variety of reasons, need to remain or likely will remain in the near term. And so for those, we also want to think about, well, what can that infrastructure, how can that infrastructure provide some benefit? Can that infrastructure be altered to maybe help make flows more natural in some way? And being able to control that flow is in and out of the pond is one way to do it. So hopefully that was sure. Just wanted to make that clear. And the first question is about the dam. In the chat, someone said, it seems like you said that dam removal is problematic, but then that it would improve peak flow management.
Sure. So logistically, from a permitting perspective, there's a lot of components to consider for dam removal. So it includes consideration of the 24-inch diameter gas line. It includes consideration of the wetlands and habitat systems and the drinking water wells. And from a H&H perspective, Indrani can say this better than I can, but we looked at one scenario that showed that this system has great potential for management, but it's not the only scenario, if you will. So there has to be more analysis completed to understand what options make sense and what are the nuances and what are the specifics of how the system will be controlled and work. Indrani, what else did I miss there?
No, that was all great. Those were all great points, Jenny. The clarification that I would like to make on the question there is, we are not seeing necessarily an improvement in peak flow. We are seeing a slight increase in peak flow, but we are seeing a decrease in peak flood volume. And that decrease in peak flood volume is occurring because the peak of the sub-watershed is occurring earlier compared to the peaking of the mainstream channel because of removing sort of that conveyance restriction of the dam. So there is a slight increase in peak flow, but we are seeing approximately a 5% decrease in peak flood volume, again, for one of the scenarios, as Jenny mentioned, that we have run, which corresponds to the 2070 10-year storm.
Are there other questions?
Oh, yes, I think we had a comment that Maureen would like to ask a question. Maureen, do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, yeah, hi everybody. I'm looking at the map here, and right now in Wellesley, there's a property of 14 acres that's across from Mass Bay. I don't know if you want to put your cursor over there. It's I don't know the proper name. I should know it. It's the Sisters of Charity property. It's a residence for retired sisters, and also a I want to say home for the elderly. I'm trying to think of the proper name. Do you know what I'm talking about? If anybody wants to chime in. It's the address is 125 Oakland Street. And apparently the sisters, there's fewer of them. And there was a couple of buildings where retired nuns and other people are being housed. It's like a nursing home, for elderly people. And I think it's up for sale, and it's 14 acres. It adjoins, it's adjacent to Centennial Park. So there's some proposals now for something like 450 units. And so I'm just wondering if anybody has, what that would do to, when you're talking about stormwater improvements on Oakland Street. If you have 450 units, a lot more impervious surface is there. I don't know if you're aware of this as a potential. If anybody has, I guess there's a developer that's got some interest in this, and it hasn't been sold yet. But anyways, how would that impact the water downstream? And could you just point out where I see the green part? I live in Wellesley, so I'm pretty familiar with Longfellow Pond. Walked around it many times. But can you just put your cursor at Longfellow Pond? Because
yes. So can you guys see my cursor right now?
Right.
Yep. So this is Longfellow Pond, the tiny little yellow.
Okay, so that I was getting confused because so then it's Oakland Street right there.
So
okay.
That's Oakland Street, and I believe this is the parcel you're speaking about.
Okay. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if there's any town staff on here that would want to answer that, or if you would like us to answer that.
Sure. How would that affect the stormwater situation?
Sure.
I mean, Brandon can chime in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I don't want to get off topic too much. This really is a complicated question that you've asked about. Certainly more impervious surface within the watershed is going to lead to more need for stormwater conveyance within the watershed and potentially worse water quality. So I'm not aware of any specific plans. I am aware of the situation at that property, but really not in a position to explain anything until there's an actual project as it relates to this. But certainly in general, more development and more impervious surface could have an impact on Longfellow Pond. So the NRC and other town boards and organizations are watching that situation closely. And of course, we would include relevant findings into any findings that come out of this project. Thanks for the question.
Well, I guess if there's some proposals to maybe we need bigger, maybe we need if that kind of a scale project with I mean, I've seen it, you know, online, like 450 units. If we're having that kind of scale project that's approved by our boards, then this needs to be re-looked at. I mean, then this may not be sufficient. What this proposal is. I mean, it should be thought of now, because you know, chances are developers are going to get it through the boards. You know, I mean, we might as well say it's going to happen. So. Yeah, I know it has to work all through the process, but let's just assume it gets through and it gets all approved by all these boards. How is that going to impact the water quality and the storage?
And so, and when we would do, you know, when we do analysis of the existing and proposed conditions, we'll be taking into consideration current and potential site conditions in the watershed. So it's a piece of the considerations around the H&H and how you would design, you know, flood reduction solutions in this whole segment.
Yeah, because this is a reality right now. I mean, chances are Mass Bay isn't going to change. You know, that's going to probably stay the same, and likely Wellesley Country Club isn't going to divide into single family homes. You know, that's in that immediate area, and probably Babson College isn't going to change. But those 14 acres. That's highly likely that's going to change.
It certainly
Thanks, Maureen. Oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead,
Jenny. Well, I was just gonna note there's another question in the chat. So another question: the pond used to empty at high water levels into a side pond behind the water treatment building, unused for some years now. Do you know whether that's still considered a part of the system?
Yeah, so that is actually a piece of the puzzle that we are looking at, because we are aware that the pond did overflow. There is indication of wetlands and other systems here. And that is sort of a piece of the idea is, do we create some more flood storage in the town forest that would be temporary in nature, and that would occur during sort of high storm events, but then drain out to allow the recreational access and maintain that long term. So hopefully that answers that question. Indrani, did I miss anything?
No, and I wanted to clarify the pond that we're talking about here, the side pond behind the water treatment building. Was this the Wellesley Waterlands that we?
No, Indrani, there's sort of an overflow area that goes into the town forest. Yeah, and you can see it on aerials, and it's pretty clear that there is sort of a wetland system and a way that water moves in here, or can move in here. And historically, it may have moved in here more frequently because of the way the dam was managed. But so we are looking at using some of this space potentially for flood storage during high flow events.
Yes, and I would just reiterate that these are really initial concepts. So all of the feedback that we are receiving from you all at this meeting today is really helpful for us to include as we further refine the concept. And we will be looking at this more at these system-wide opportunities to see how better we can manage both the pond management as well as the management of the adjacent systems around it.
Okay, and so we are
can I ask one quick
time. Oh,